Tessa. So excited to have you on the podcast here today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here, Jared.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. It's going to be fun. You're the first episode I've recorded with the new colors.
Okay.
So that's going to be a trivia question for anyone listening in a few years. And now you know. I would love to start the conversation here today, Tessa, with this is your first time coming on the show. So tell the audience, let's assume there's some people that are just hearing about Dusty Robotics for the first time. So tell them about the company and then just give us a brief overview of your background and then we'll have a good chat.
So let me start with my background and I'll segue into the company. So I've been a roboticist since 2012. Before that, I was in AI, software automation, and I got into robotics because unlike software, robots can actually change the world. They move atoms, not bits. And I was really inspired to start working on that because I wanted to have impact on the world. And so I went to a company called Willow Garage, the premier research lab for robotics. After a year, a couple of us started a startup, which turned into Savioke, and that was building robots for delivery in hotels. And then 7 years ago, I decided to start a new company, which would become Dusty, and I got involved in construction. I got involved in construction because I was doing a house remodel at the time, and I knew I wanted to start a robotics company, and there were no robots helping remodel my home. And the more I dug into it, the more I realized that the industry is very based on manual labor. There are lots of skilled labor shortages, and there's very little automation. And so I saw an opportunity to bring robotics into this industry, given my background in automation and robotics. And so my co-founder and I spent 6 months walking around on job sites. And when we saw people on their hands and knees doing layout and measuring out very painstakingly where all of the things are going to go inside of a building, we realized that would be something that robots can do a lot better than. And so we got that idea. We started designing a robot. We built a company around it. And 7 years later, here we are.
By the way, your backgrounds to build this, just like it aligns so perfectly. I hope we see more people with backgrounds like that continue to come into this space because I think when you mesh the insider and outsiders in a space, especially like construction, it just ends up creating some really cool products and companies as a result, which obviously you've done. Talk me through, how the product actually works and maybe what exactly it replaces in a traditional workflow.
So most people, when they hear of Dusty or they look at our website, what they see is the robot. And that's kind of the coolest part of our system, but it's only one part of the system. And what that robot does, we call it a field printer, is it takes your digital model, Revit, CAD, anything like that, and it prints it full scale on the floor. And so instead of having to look at plans or whip out a tablet to see what you need to know, that information, everything you need to know to build is on the ground right in front of your feet. And so it's kind of like turning construction to paint by numbers because all of that information gets brought out into the field. And so what we've built, our whole system includes that robot. It also includes a bunch of software. We have integrations with Revit and AutoCAD. We have a web-based portal where our customers go to upload information and verify it. And then we also have reporting and stuff that happens after you show up and print on site. And all those combined together to create this fully digital file to field experience.
As you've been building this, has there been any particular area for certain build outs that you see use it more than anyone else?
Definitely. Right now, so we got started, our first job was in 2020. And since then, we've done pretty much everything from single family all the way up to data centers and hospitals and stadiums. Where we see the sweet spot and people tend to bring us in the most often is on complex projects that are fully BIM coordinated. And so we do a lot of hospitals, we do a lot of data centers, but we're also providing a lot of value in the lower end projects like multifamily residential, commercial. And so at this point, I would say we've probably been on every single type of job.
And what's the reaction like for the crews on site when they first see this in action?
So I won't lie, we get a lot of skepticism at first, right? You get the grizzled old superintendent saying, it's never going to work. And then typically within like 30 seconds, they watch the robot as it's going around and they become complete converts. And I have so many examples of that. And that's because everyone who's been around construction for long enough has been around to know that layout is the most important part of the process. If you get layout wrong, everything downstream goes sideways. And so if you have correct layout, That means that everyone knows exactly what to do. There's no more communication errors. There's no more missing things, or people using the wrong information, or people building off of incorrect or outdated information. And that just makes the entire project go together a lot more smoothly, like butter.
To me, it brings like another level of transparency too for everyone on the site, right? Which I think is really cool.
Yeah, one of our biggest supporter groups is VDC teams, because they already spend most of their lives putting together the building and software, right? Before it actually makes its way into the field. And so Dusty is basically giving them that communications tool to take all of that work, hard the work that they put into simulating and designing that building, and communicating that out to everyone in the field so that everyone gets the benefit of all of that work that goes into VDC.
When you were first building this, like, what were some of the, I guess, major challenges or roadblocks that you continued to run into?
So we've resolved most of the major roadblocks on the technology side. There are still some challenges on the scaling side, and the adoption side. The technology, one of the hardest things that we had to solve early on was how to make this thing accurate, because no one had ever built anything like this before. And now that we're on the other side, we've actually created the most accurate mobile robot on the planet, which is no small feat. It's not easy to do that. It looks really easy from the outside. You know, we kind of have to make it really deceptively simple, but there's a lot of technology under the covers that has gone into actually creating a robot that can print straight lines exactly where they need to go. Right now, we are at the industry leading accuracy, which is a 16th of an inch or a millimeter, and nothing else can compare with that. But that's what our customers need to be able to build, especially using prefab modular construction. Everything needs to fit in its place, and that's the kind of solution that we're delivering to them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's a high stakes industry, right? You had to be super accurate in what you were doing, or adoption would not have been there. So kudos to you and your team for what you've built. Can we talk about just even more broadly of robotics and construction in general and what that means? Like, what are, when it comes to robotics and construction, what are some of the main misconceptions that are out there?
I think the biggest misconception that people have about robotics is that it's all about replacing labor, or solving your labor shortage problem. It's not. It's about quality. And most people don't realize that because they don't think quality and robots together in the same sentence. The realization there is that problem that I think construction is facing as an outsider looking in is that it's not that you don't have enough people to build. It's that the things that the people that you do have and what they build is not high quality enough. I heard this story about one of our customers building a project down in Texas. They had less skilled labor down there with that labor population, and layout is this really high stakes thing. They actually had to lay out the building 4 times before they got it right. And so it's not that they didn't have the labor to do it. It's not that they were suffering a labor shortage. They needed the quality. And you can only get that quality when you start introducing automation and digitization into your workflow. And that's really what robots are bringing to the industry.
Talk me through, Tessa, a little bit around, you mentioned it a little bit already, but what kind of impact that you've been able to see, but not just in speed or accuracy, but how teams are now working together as a result.
So, one of my favorite statistics is that Dusty robots have printed over 3 million words on construction sites to date. And if you think about it, that's like 27 full length novels.
Yeah.
A lot of words, right? Some of those words are actually in different languages. Our customers print bilingual English and Spanish, for example. And, in fact, we did a project down in Mexico, our first project down in Mexico, and all of the instructions were printed in Spanish because the crews only spoke Spanish. Can you fancy that? Right. And this was a US based team that was working with a Mexican labor crew. And so, if you think about all the communication issues that would normally arise on a job site like that, where people don't even speak the same language, Dusty, as a way to mediate and facilitate that communication, is a really powerful tool.
When you were first kind of explaining Dusty Robotics, you tapped into this a little bit, but construction is one of those old school industries. It is changing
Mhm.
more than it has in years past. But what's it like selling innovation into that space overall?
I think construction tech gets a bad rap. There's the people that say the construction never changes and then it's really slow to adopt technology. We haven't seen that actually, and I think that's because our product strikes a nerve. We've picked a problem that everyone has. Layout happens on every single job site, and everyone needs to do it in order to be able to construct the right building. Um, and we've produced a solution that solved that problem really elegantly and very simply. Um, and so as a result, we're actually seeing really relatively rapid adoption, and people not really they're the thing I will say, uh, it's great to have competition. And so I actually love the fact that HP came out with their robot a couple years after ours and are starting to help us push this category forward, right? We're creating this new category of automated layout tools. Never existed before, right? Before 2020, a lot of people had the idea. I've talked to so many people who have Roombas in their garage with a pen strapped to it that they thought might be able to solve this problem. And it turns out it's a little bit harder than that. And so we've been able to create this new class of thing. And the fact that there are multiple options now actually make it a lot more valid. And I could tell when HP came on the market, our sales conversations went from, I'm not sure that this thing is going to work, to, oh, there are now multiple options. Let me pick the best one. And so it became a lot easier to sell because people are starting to recognize that automated layout is here to stay.
What's been, I guess, something you've learned on the job as a founder that book, investor, mentor could have prepared you for?
I think resiliency is one of the key traits that successful founders need to have. And in fact, we were just talking about it before the show. There are so many things that have to go right in order for a business to be successful. And if you give up too soon, you're not going to be able to see those come through. And so it's hard to learn resiliency from a book or from a class or a professor. It's something that you earn over time, continuing to pick yourself up and realizing that, yeah, life deals you a setback, but you can get back up, you can try again. And next time you might get a better outcome.
I honestly believe that resilience is the number one skill that if an entrepreneur could only have one skill,
Yeah.
if they were resilient and that was their mentality, because it's just being able to make the right pivots,
Mhm.
they would be successful in whatever they were doing at some point. It might not always look the same as what the initial vision was, but that's resilience, right? Just keep. Although I used to always say, someone asked me as like a non-founder one time, they just said like, "What's entrepreneurship like? You fall down, you keep getting kicked, and eventually you just start to like getting kicked." Um, like I mean, that's probably like a extreme example, but like we experience so many highs and lows.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know about you, but whenever I had like a good like high moment that like I was fired up about in business,
Mhm.
it never really stuck with me. It's kind of like whatever it was, like on to the next thing, and I feel like that's also a very common. You can't get caught up in anything that's because as we learn, right, there could be a million good things that happen.
Mhm.
You almost feel like there's always going to be that next obstacle that comes up when all these good things start happening. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but that's my thoughts.
Oh, I know. I have the same problem. And one of my New Year's resolutions this year is to not stress about things I can't control. There are so many things out there, like the economy, like what's going on with the tariffs. There's a lot of uncertainty right now in
Mm-hmm.
construction, but those are things that I can't impact. Right? I try as I might. There's not much I can do about those things, and so let's focus on the things that you can control. Right? Which is your team, your product, your company, and doing the best you can. And whether you're successful or not, some of it's in your hands and some of it's not, and you got to be okay with that. Right? And all of us as entrepreneurs, we're just rolling the dice and hoping that everything that we do and all the decisions we make are enough to thrive in uncertain environments. And a lot of that is not up to us.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. One or two more things before we wrap up here today, Tessa. What's something that you can laugh about now, but when it first happened, it made you want to cry?
Oh my God. We have so many disaster stories on construction sites. One of the biggest disasters was with one of our early customers. We were piloting on, it was going to be a Whole Foods and an apartment building on top of it, like a mixed use. and in the heart of San Francisco. And speaking of like technology challenges that were hard to solve, the wireless connection between all of the pieces of our system, we started using Wi-Fi. And turns out when you're in the middle of a big city, and you've got all these apartment windows around you, each one of those windows broadcasting a Wi-Fi signal right in your direction, that creates a lot of congestion, and that caused our robot to misbehave. Instead of printing a really straight line, dividing the bathrooms from the aisle and the back of the Whole Foods, it drew a nice curved line. It was on finished floor. The superintendent got this horrified look on his face and started screaming at us, "Shut that thing down! Get that off our site!" Um, and um, and we never lived that down. They will still tell that story forever, but we have managed to solve the technology problem that was causing it to happen. And so now we laugh about it, but it's part of the growing pains of creating a new product and getting it on the market.
I love stories like that. I mean, at the time that was probably very stressful for you, but when you get past it, it's a funny story to laugh at. Uh, in hindsight. Huh. Yeah, it's well, Tessa, I've really enjoyed chatting with you. You're so like I'm glad I had this opportunity to get to know you more in Dusty Robotics, and we'll continue to be a fan and follow along with your story. But thanks so much for being here today.
Thanks, Jared. I really appreciate the opportunity.